Hey y'all, my name is Chelsea Luke and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to discuss my diagnosis with you. I am a little bit nervous, so instead of just continuing to ramble on, which I do very easily, I'm just going to jump right into it. If you see me looking down, I've actually taken notes because this goes back as far as 2008 and I don't want to forget anything or miss anything. I have been to about 5 or 6 doctor's appointments since January, and that was just an updated doctor's appointment. I've always been very stubborn about going to the doctor, so when I'm sick I either try to get over it or I go to the ER and get like a steroid shot if I need it, and then that's pretty much it. I don't go past that. So going to get a checkup is very rare for me. I never go. I know that's a horrible thing, but I just don't. So with that being said, what actually prompted me to go to the doctor in January was just me being tired of being sick all of the time. I will sporadically throw up. I constantly keep heartburn. I'm always taking these spells where I'm excessively dizzy. I can pass out. It's really bad, and it has been since I was about 14. So like I said, I started having these spells around 14. I would get really sick, nauseous, sweaty, dizzy, and then I would start craving something sweet. And once I ate something sweet, the feelings would go away. They would just stop. And I never, put 2 and 2 together and thought that that had anything to do with my sugar. And it was also around that time that I did start sporadically throwing up and getting sick. And I never could really pinpoint what was wrong with me. At this age, I started to really notice that I hadn't, a little bit of TMI, but I hadn't started yet. And I talked to my mom, and she said that my aunt was a late bloomer, so we didn't really worry about that, even though I had definitely hit puberty, because my body was definitely showing that I was going through puberty. I just hadn't started yet. We never really got me checked out until I was about 16 and a half. I was still having these spells, I was still staying sick, and I still hadn't started yet. So my mom was like, okay, let's go to the doctor and see what's going on. This was my first gynecologist appointment ever. I had been to a doctor before to get lab work done, which is why we didn't think it was my sugar that was causing it, because they said that everything was fine, that my thyroid checked out just fine, that my cholesterol was fine, my insulin was fine. I had elevated testosterone. That was about all they could see, but it was just like 1 to 2 points elevated. So we didn't really worry about that. So at my first gynecologist appointment, I saw a midwife. She was a very lovely woman. She did an annual checkup, which came back normal, and she also did lab work. When they got the lab work back, she let us know that my estrogen was a little low and that my testosterone was elevated more so than it was when I was 14 and we had it checked. She said that this could be preventing me from having a menstrual cycle, and that I could be started on birth control, and that would start the cycle for me. This was also something that had happened to my aunt, and she had to go on birth control as well to start hers, so it wasn't unusual, and I didn't really think anything of it. She did start me out on pill form, and I did not like it. We tried 3 different kinds. I can't for the life of me remember what those were. I was 16. But they made me sicker than I already was. I didn't like the feeling of grogginess. I had weight gain with them, and you can ask my parents. Any typical teenager is definitely moody, but I was excessively moody. Like, it was bad. So we went back to the doctor, and she suggested that we try NuvaRing. And if you don't know what NuvaRing is, it's a little silicone ring that's insertable. It's not inserted by the doctor. You actually insert it yourself. And I can't remember exactly how it worked, but you would like insert it, and then so many days later your period would start. They would come in like little packs, and you had so many of them. I hated that thing. I was so scared that something would go wrong, that it would I don't know. I was like, okay, this is going to get embedded in there somewhere. It was bad. I was just really nervous about it. So I stopped using that altogether. Like I said, I was very stubborn, and to be quite honest, it didn't bother me whether or not I had a period. Didn't faze me one way or the other. I didn't know that there were any repercussions of not having one, and so I just chose not to. I should also mention that when she did my lab work, she said that my thyroid was fine, my cholesterol was fine, and that I was not diabetic. So we still have, at this point, no answers for why I am still throwing up, why my acid reflux is out of control, why I feel so horrible, why I'm constantly drained of energy, because my B12 was fine, and she couldn't give me any reasons as to why I was having these spells. So 16 years old, still haven't figured out what's going on there, and I've stopped taking any sort of birth control to have a menstrual cycle. The next time that I went to the gynecologist, I was 18 and a half, and I went to a different gynecologist than I had before. I saw a man, and he is a board certified gynecologist. He's not a midwife. And I primarily saw his physician's assistant. She's the one that did the annual exam, which also came back normal. She's the one that read me all of the information, but he was my designated gynecologist, even though I was seeing her. He's very booked. He stays that way, so I saw her primarily. We did an annual, and we did blood work. When she did the blood work, it came back, and she told me that my thyroid was fine, my cholesterol was fine, that my testosterone was elevated, my estrogen was low. So this is not unnormal. These are things I had all heard. You know, I'd heard all of these things before, so it wasn't unnatural for me to know these things. But she said that I was showing insulin resistance, and I had no idea what that was. She said that that meant that I had PCOS, which means polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I thought for the longest time you had to have cysts on your ovaries to have PCOS. But she said that is not the case. There is a list of things, a little checklist, and if you have 3 or more, you are technically diagnosed with PCOS. So at this point, I was already overweight. I had elevated testosterone and what appeared to be insulin resistance. And those 3 things immediately qualified me for PCOS. I wasn't really told what insulin resistance was. She tried to explain it to me. She said it's like your body produces insulin, but mine doesn't know how to take the insulin, so it mass produces the insulin. Kind of like, here's the door, the insulin's knocking, my body won't let it in, so it just mass produces it to hopefully get around the door, or however. That's how she explained it to me at 18 and a half. So you can imagine I was a little bit confused. And she said, okay, so we're going to put you on metformin. I had no idea what that was. Apparently that is a diabetic medication. Right out the gate, they started me on 3 a day. This woman told me that that was as many that they could give me. That was the highest they could go. That is not the case. I found that out recently. We'll get to that. But she started me out on 3 a day, and they put me on a pill called Provera. It is a 10-day pill that starts your menstrual cycle. It's not birth control. It's just a 10-day pill to start you. It is called Provera, and it is progesterone. And you take the pill for 10 days, and within that next week, you should start your period. So I started taking that, worked like a charm. By day 13, I had started. I hadn't had but one to two other periods in my life. So you can imagine at 18 and a half that this was absolutely miserable, because I'm not even going to get into that. Y'all know what a period is. It was miserable. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do this, but I did it for 3 months, and I was taking the metformin. Now, side effects of metformin are severe diarrhea, being nauseated, things like that, and I hit every single side effect. I had horrible migraines. I was constantly having diarrhea. I was even throwing up. So because I am such a stubborn human being, I just quit taking it. I was like, you know what, just forget it. I'm not taking this anymore. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I'm not doing this. and I had a gynecologist appointment coming up, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop taking it, and I'll tell him I've stopped taking it. So I go back to my gynecologist, and I see him this time, and he's like, okay, what do you want to do? And I'm like, what do you mean, what do I want to do? I don't want to take this medicine anymore. And he didn't really give me any other options. I just pretty much told him I wasn't going to take the metformin anymore. They said that was fine and sent me on my way. Told me that if I ever wanted to get pregnant in the future, that I would have to take a pill called Clomid, which is not covered by health insurance. It is $100 per pill. They start you off on 1, then 2, and however long it takes. But I was supposed to continue taking the Provera. I did not. I wasn't told that I had to. He said 3 periods a year should be fine. If I wanted to take it that way, I could. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I just won't take it anymore. So I quit taking that, and I didn't go back to that doctor. So I've had 2 different gynecologists. Now I'm supposedly insulin resistant, but they didn't seem like it was a problem that I quit taking the metformin, so I didn't really think about it. And then I got married, and we don't have any kids. We've been married 5 years. And I was like, okay, we kind of probably need to go to the gynecologist, you know, just get me checked out, see what all has to happen for me to eventually have kids. We have never tried for kids. So it's not like we were in a state where it was like, we've got to find out what's going on. I've got to know. I've got to know. So I went back to the male gynecologist that I saw before. And he was like, okay, we're still having these issues. They did the blood work again. Showed that I was, you know, still insulin resistant. Everything was still coming back normal as far as thyroid, cholesterol, all that. But he was like, okay, do you want to start Clomid? And I was like, no, we're not trying. I was just seeing if anything had changed. Did I need to take anything else? I was coming in for an annual. I was 20 at the time. And so it's been 2.5 or 2 or 1.5. 1.5, 2 years? Math's not my strong suit. Almost 2 years since I had seen him, and almost 2 years since I'd had a period at that point too. He re-prescribes me Provera. I took it for about 4 months. And then did we move that following year? Yeah, I think we moved. No. I just quit seeing him. That's horrible. We moved in January of 2014 to North Carolina. And it wasn't until September of 2014 that I went and saw a gynecologist down there. So I had turned 22, and I went to a woman in Charlotte. And they were one of the nicest outfits I had ever been to. They did a vaginal ultrasound. They did lab work. They did a bunch of things on me to ensure that I had all of these things. She said I was not insulin resistant. It depended on what time you were taking my blood, if I'd been fasting. She gave me a bunch of things. She said, depending on when you check your blood, it could be different. And so, gotten 3 different reviews from three different gynecologists. Well, first one was a midwife. Second one was a gynecologist. I believe was the third one a midwife? Oddly enough, her name was Charlotte, and she lived in Charlotte, and that's where it was. She might have been a midwife as well. But we did a vaginal ultrasound, and she said that I had immature follicles on my ovaries caused by low testosterone. Or not low testosterone, but low estrogen, high testosterone. So somewhere in the developmental stage, my follicles on my ovaries stopped, which immediately qualifies you for PCOS. So right out the gate, I know, okay, I have PCOS, but she's saying I'm not insulin resistant, so I don't have to go on any type of medication. They requested that, you know, they didn't request, they advised that I go on a diet and lose some weight, which I'll get into. And that was that. She put me on Provera down there. I took it until we moved back to Kentucky. So I actually did what I was supposed to do and took the Provera while I was there. We were there until January of 2016, and we moved back. And I haven't been to a doctor until January of this year, which catches us up to speed.